The lawyer's phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was eating cereal before my shift at the auto parts store. I almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors or telemarketers, and I had enough problems without dealing with either. But something made me pick up on the fourth ring. "Is this Austin Caldwell?" The voice was professional formal. "Yeah, that's me. Mr. Caldwell, this is Margaret Stevens from Stevens, Bradley and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Eleanor Caldwell. I believe she was your grandmother?" My spoon clattered into my bowl. Grandma Eleanor had passed away 6 months ago, and I hadn't been allowed at the funeral. My parents, David and Susan Caldwell, had made it clear that I wasn't welcome. "Yes, she was my grandmother," I said carefully. "I need to schedule a meeting with you, Mr. Caldwell. There are some matters regarding her that require your immediate attention." "I think there's been a mistake," I said. "My parents told me I wasn't included in her will. They said she left everything to them and my brother." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Caldwell, I think we definitely need to meet. Are you available this afternoon?" 2 hours later, I was sitting in a leather chair in Margaret Stevens' law office, staring at documents that made no sense. According to the papers in front of me, my grandmother had left me $2.1 million, her house, and several investment accounts. There must be some mistake, I repeated for the third time. My parents said I was adopted. They said Grandma Eleanor wasn't really my grandmother, that she had no obligation to me. Margaret Stevens, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Caldwell, your grandmother was very specific in her instructions. She wanted me to give you this letter personally. She handed me an envelope with my name written in Grandma Eleanor's careful handwriting." My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Austin, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and Margaret has finally been able to reach you. I've been trying to see you for the past 3 years, but your parents have made that impossible. I need you to know the truth about everything because the lies your parents have told you are cruel and completely false. You are not adopted. You are my biological grandson, the son of my beloved daughter Jennifer. Jennifer was your father David's first wife, and she died in a car accident when you were 2 years old. David remarried Susan 6 months later, and Susan never wanted to acknowledge that you existed. She wanted David to give you up for adoption so they could start fresh with their own children. David, to his shame, went along with this plan. But I fought for you, Austin. I threatened to take them to court for custody. I told them I would expose what they were trying to do to the whole family, the whole community. They kept you, but only because I forced their hand. Susan has resented you ever since. She's the one who told you that you were adopted, who convinced David to treat you differently from Logan and Ashley. Every cruel word, every time they excluded you, every time they made you feel like you didn't belong. That was Susan's doing and David's cowardice in going along with it. I tried to maintain a relationship with you, but Susan made it increasingly difficult. She would cancel visits, refuse to let you answer my calls, and eventually they moved you all across the state specifically to keep you away from me. The last time I saw you, you were 15 years old. I've missed 6 years of your life because of their selfishness. I'm leaving you everything, Austin, not just because you're my grandson, but because you're the only one in this family who has faced hardship with dignity. I know about the community college, the jobs, the apartment you can barely afford. I know because I hired a private investigator to keep track of you when your parents wouldn't let me see you. I also know that David and Susan have been telling people that my estate will be divided equally among all the grandchildren. They've been spending money they don't have, expecting a big inheritance. They're going to be very surprised. I hope this money gives you the freedom to build the life you deserve. But more than that, I hope this letter gives you the truth you've always deserved to know. You are loved. You are wanted. You always have been. All my love. Grandma Eleanor. P.S. The house keys are in the safe deposit box. I hope you'll consider living there. It's been waiting for you. I read the letter 3 times before the words really sank in. Not adopted, my mother, my real mother, had died when I was 2. Susan wasn't my mother at all, just a woman who had married my father and spent the next 19 years making me feel like an unwanted burden. The private investigator she mentioned, Margaret said gently, he documented quite a bit about your living situation. Your grandmother was very concerned about how you were being treated. She handed me another folder. Inside were photographs and reports spanning several years. Pictures of me walking to work, living in my tiny studio apartment, eating ramen noodles for dinner. My grandmother had been watching over me from afar, caring about me when my own father couldn't be bothered. What did my parents think they were inheriting? I asked. Margaret smiled grimly. Your grandmother led them to believe they would receive the bulk of her estate. She'd encouraged this belief. She wanted them to spend money they didn't have, thinking they'd be able to pay it back with their inheritance. How much money did they spend? Based on what your grandmother told me and what the investigator observed, quite a lot. Your father bought a new truck last year, $65,000. Your mother remodeled their kitchen, another $40,000. Your brother Logan got a boat for his birthday, $30,000. They've been living well above their means. I thought about my own life during that same period, working 50 hours a week at the auto parts store, taking night classes at community college, living on peanut butter sandwiches and instant coffee. While my family was spending my grandmother's money before they even had it, I was struggling to pay for basic necessities. What exactly did they inherit? I asked. Margaret consulted her papers. Each of your siblings received $5,000. Your parents received nothing. 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 Your grandmother was very clear that David had forfeited his right to inherit when he chose his new wife over his own son. I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. $2 million. A house. The truth about my identity. And my family, who had treated me like garbage for 21 years, had been cut out entirely. There's one more thing, Margaret said. Your grandmother requested that I be present when you inform your family about the inheritance. She wanted a witness to their reaction. That's how I found myself driving to my parents' house the next evening with a lawyer in my passenger seat and a cashier's check for $2.1 million in my jacket pocket. I hadn't been to the house in over a year, not since my father told me I was too old to be looking for handouts. When I asked to borrow money for textbooks, the house looked the same from the outside. Upper middle class suburban perfection with a new truck in the driveway and perfectly manicured landscaping. Susan answered the door, and her expression immediately soured when she saw me. Austin, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. All of us. It's about Grandma Eleanor's will. Her expression shifted to something calculating. Oh well, I suppose you should come in. She led us into the living room, where my father was watching TV and my siblings, Logan and Ashley, were on their phones. The room had been redecorated since my last visit. New furniture, new paint, new expensive-looking artwork on the walls. David, Susan called, Austin's here about Eleanor's will. My father looked up, and I could see the exact moment he noticed Margaret Stevens in her professional suit carrying a briefcase. Who's this? He asked. Margaret Stevens, she said, extending her hand. I was Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell's attorney. Everyone suddenly paid attention. Logan put down his phone. Ashley looked up from her Instagram. Susan sat down quickly, smoothing her hair. Well, my father said, forcing a smile, I guess it's time to sort out Mom's affairs. I appreciate you coming all the way out here. Actually, Margaret said, I'm here for Austin. The room went quiet. I don't understand, Susan said slowly. Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. I'm here to inform Austin about his inheritance from Eleanor Caldwell's estate. His inheritance? My father's voice cracked slightly. There must be some mistake. Austin isn't. I mean, he wasn't really. He wasn't really what, Mr. Caldwell? Margaret's voice was ice cold. He's adopted, Susan said quickly. Eleanor wasn't his real grandmother. She had no obligation to leave him anything. Margaret turned to me. Austin, would you like to tell them what you learned yesterday, or shall I? I stood up, pulling out the letter. I learned that I'm not adopted. I learned that Jennifer Caldwell was my mother, and she died when I was 2. I learned that Susan convinced my father to give me up for adoption, and the only reason they didn't was because Grandma Eleanor threatened to fight for custody. Susan's face went white. Logan and Ashley looked confused. That's not true, Susan stammered. That's impossible. I also learned, I continued, that Grandma Eleanor left me her entire estate. The house, the investments, and $2.1 million in cash. The silence that followed was deafening. That can't be right, my father said, his voice hollow. She promised us. She said the estate would be divided equally among the grandchildren. She lied, I said simply. Just like you lied to me for 21 years. Ashley found her voice first. Wait, what about us? What did we get? Margaret consulted her papers. You and Logan each received $5,000. 5,000. Logan exploded. That's it. What about the house? What about all her money? It all goes to Austin, Margaret said calmly. Susan stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We'll contest the will. Austin has no right to any of this money. We're the ones who took care of Eleanor. We're the ones who visited her, who helped her when she was sick. Actually, Margaret said, Mrs. Caldwell documented quite extensively that you prevented Austin from visiting her. She also documented that your visits usually involved asking for money. You can contest the will if you like, she continued, but I should warn you that Mrs. Caldwell anticipated that possibility. The will is ironclad, witnessed by multiple parties, and she was evaluated by 2 separate psychiatrists who confirmed her mental competency. A contest would be expensive and futile. My father slumped back in his chair. Austin, you have to understand. We never meant for things to go this way. Didn't you? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you got exactly what you wanted. You got rid of the inconvenient reminder of your first wife. You got to play happy family with your new kids. The only thing you didn't count on was Grandma Eleanor seeing through your act. We raised you, Susan said desperately. We fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof over your head. Doesn't that count for something? You did the bare minimum required by law, I replied, and you made sure I knew every single day that I was unwanted. I looked around the room at these people who had shaped my entire childhood, who had made me feel worthless and unwanted, who had convinced me that I was lucky they tolerated my existence. The truck, I said to my father. The kitchen renovation. Logan's boat. Ashley's car. How much did you spend thinking you'd inherit Grandma's money? My father couldn't meet my eyes. About $200,000, Susan whispered. Well, I said, standing up. I guess you'll figure it out. You're good at telling people to figure things out. Margaret and I headed toward the door, but Ashley's voice stopped us. Austin, wait. You're not really going to take everything, are you? I mean, we're still family. I turned back to look at her, sweet Ashley, who had never once stood up for me when Susan was tearing me down. Ashley, who had gotten a new car for her 16th birthday while I was working nights to pay for my own transportation. Family? I said. You mean like how you included me in family photos? Oh wait, you didn't. Or like how you invited me to family vacations? Oh wait, you didn't do that either. Or maybe you mean like how you stood up for me when Susan told everyone I was adopted. No, you didn't do that either. But the money could help all of us, Logan said. You could share it. We could all benefit. The money is helping all of us, I replied. It's helping me because I'm the one Grandma Eleanor wanted to help. You want money? Get jobs. Take out loans. Figure it out. As Margaret and I reached the door, Susan called out one last time. Austin, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Doesn't that mean anything? I paused with my hand on the doorknob. David is my father, I said quietly. Jennifer was my mother. You're just the woman who married my dad and spent 21 years making me wish I'd never been born. We left them there in their expensive living room, surrounded by all the things they'd bought with money they never actually had, facing the reality that their lies have finally caught up with them. 6 months later, I moved into Grandma Eleanor's house. Its beautiful 4 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, a garden that she maintained herself until the very end. I found photos there that I'd never seen before. Pictures of me as a baby with my real mother, family gatherings where I looked happy and loved, evidence of the life I might have had if Jennifer had lived. I also found more letters from Grandma Eleanor, written but never sent, documenting years of trying to maintain contact with me. Birthday cards she'd bought but wasn't allowed to give me, Christmas presents that were returned unopened. I finished my degree, business administration with a focus on finance. With my grandmother's money properly invested, I don't have to work, but I do anyway. I started a nonprofit organization that helps kids who age out of foster care, kids who know what it's like to feel unwanted and alone. My father has called me exactly once since that day at Margaret's office. He asked if I would consider helping them avoid foreclosure on their house. I told him to contact my lawyer if he wanted to discuss anything financial. Susan sends me Christmas cards every year with notes about family forgiveness and moving forward. I throw them away unopened. Logan lost the boat, couldn't make the payments without the inheritance he was counting on. Ashley had to get a job to help her parents pay their bills. They learned what I'd always known, that money doesn't just appear because you want it to, and that actions have consequences. But the best part isn't the money, as life-changing as it's been. The best part is the truth. For the first time in my life, I know who I really am. I know that I was loved unconditionally by at least one person. I know that my real mother didn't abandon me, she was taken from me. I know that the feeling of never quite belonging wasn't my fault. Sometimes I sit in Grandma Aliner's garden, reading her letters and looking through old photo albums, and I feel her presence. I feel the love she wasn't allowed to give me while she was alive, the relationship we were cheated out of by my father's cowardice and Susan's cruelty. I wish I could thank her in person. I wish I could tell her that her final gift wasn't just the money. It was the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is worth more than $2 million. Though the $2 million doesn't hurt either.